Good morning. Welcome back for our 11 o'clock session. We're glad to have you back here, and I'm sure we'll see more of you flowing as we go. Again, we want to say thank you to our sponsor, and that is Bluewater. I'm standing right in front of you. Bluewater is our sponsor for our educational sessions for the second time this year. It's really been a pleasure to work with them on this, and they have a brief message they want to share with you.
Hey guys, Randy Jackson here.
Welcome to the future of pain relief.
At Tommy John, a lot goes into our underwear before you do.
But now I've found my bubbly side with SodaStream.
Out!
Philips Air Fryer is the original and the very best.
Kid Rock!
Hey, why is everybody so loud in infomercials?
But wait, there's more.
Yeah.
Woo!
Welcome in the Women's Leadership Council today, our most active and vibrant member council, over 70 members strong. Fern Lee is the creator of the Women's Council. Yes. A round of applause, well deserved for Fern and the Women's Council. Every meeting, every month is an enjoyable experience. They do these talks where a woman gets up and one of the women on the council gets up and shares about their experiences, and it's just a tremendous thing. So if you're not involved in the Women's Council, we urge you to do so. It's a really great thing. Their content today is called Content is Queen. We're going to dive into some of the great things that are happening out there, women-directed content, sports content, and how performance marketers are going to be able to access and do well. I want to give a quick intro to Fern. Fern Lee is the CEO of Thor Associates, chair of the Women's Leadership Council, and a member of the PDMI's e-commerce council. An experienced and award-winning expert with a proven track record of creating brand loyalty, lead generation, and transactional revenue by utilizing brand and direct response marketing methods, including DRTV production and media, and linear, CTV, programmatic, and OTT, digital, radio, print, retail, home shopping, and international to create a robust ROI. In 2018, right here in San Diego, Fern was inducted into the Direct Response Hall of Fame. Under the Thor umbrella, Fern has opened the funnel and provided success to recent clients such as MetLife, AIG, Humana, Transact, Johnson & Johnson, Colonial Penn, Mars, Balsam Hill, Focus Factor, Kumon, and many more. And you think I'd have this memorized by now. Anyway, Fern Lee, take it away.
Thank you, Tom. I really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. It's been an exciting day and a half so far. We're looking forward to the next day and a half. I encourage you all to keep coming to the sessions. Each one is so different and standalone. And then obviously there's all the networking, but most important is the cocktail parties, which we all know and love. So today we're going to talk about Content is Queen. It's been an amazing year for women and progressing. It's just been phenomenal in every genre, but the one genre that really sticks out is women's sports. So we start with Serena Williams, who hosted the ESPYs. Unbelievable. We have the women's NCAA playoffs outperforming the men's NCAA playoffs, both in ratings and impressions, right? Go, absolutely, it was fantastic. And then, of course, we have the genre of all genres, WNBA. It's a standout on its own. Women, men, children, all leaning in. It's so exciting. I mean, I just met somebody new who's the president of a company, said, oh my God, my 12-year-old son, all he wants to do is watch the NBA, WNBA. He can't stand the NBA. So it's just been an unbelievable time. So I'm gonna have each panelist introduce themselves, talk a little about who they are, who their company is, and then we'll just jump into everything. So first up is Sarah Andreakdakis. She knows I'm gonna blow it. I knew I was gonna blow it. So how do you pronounce your last name? Come on.
Andreakdakis. So that was the most creative way you said it.
Pressure.
So I'm Sarah. I'm the Executive Vice President of Media and Client Services at Bluewater. Bluewater, we are a marketing and advertising agency from start to finish, from production all the way through helping clients get their businesses sold. We help our clients achieve their goals. So happy to be here and be part of your panel. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. And then we have Scott Berger. See, nice, easy last name. I didn't love that.
That was easy, right?
Thank you.
Scott Berger, Vice President of SMB at Scripps. So not just representing the entire Scripps portfolio, but today, obviously, the WNBA, NWSL on ION. Really excited to be here and talk about, how important that has been to us and, seeing that this is not just a moment in time, but a movement when it comes to women's sports and how that impacts the performance industry in general.
Absolutely. And then we have Carey Grange, who's just started a new company. So talk a little about that and the name of the company.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Carey Grange. I am a partner and brand and marketing strategist for Growth Envy Marketing. I have a long history using performance marketing to drive brand growth, and that's what we do. We work with our clients on using ROI-based content marketing to drive brand growth and acquire new customers and just get more efficient with their media spend so they can achieve enterprise value, usually helping shepherd them to some type of an event.
Fantastic. We're glad you're here. Alyson, Sprague.
Hi everyone, I'm Alyson. I am the head of ad measurement at Wondery. Wondery is the... Thanks, team.
Always seed the audience. It's really important.
Yes, appreciate the support. So Wondery is the premium global podcast content studio owned by Amazon. I lead the ad measurement program there, so I'm responsible for helping advertisers measure the success of their campaigns. And one of my favorite parts about that job is just helping advertisers make data-informed decisions and watching them improve their marketing over time. Personally, I'm a mom. I have a 1.5-year-old daughter. She's an absolute joy. And I guess some fun facts. I'm an extreme sports junkie. Been skiing and snowboarding since I've been 2. I'm a licensed skydiver. So put a parachute on my back or a board under my feet and I'm in my happy place.
Fantastic. Wow. All right, let's get started. Okay, hold on. All right. So how do we market to women differently than men, both in content messaging and media placement? Sarah, why don't you jump in and talk a little about media placement, and then I'll move on to content.
I think they kind of go together because content, I believe, is where it all begins. And that story, that message of what's going to resonate with your customer. And so we have to understand what their interests are, where are they watching, what resonates with them. And so when we start that journey of understanding what it is our good or service we're trying to sell, we go into all of the research of what motivates this customer, where do they spend their time, what does that tone look like when I'm talking to a woman, trying to advertise to a woman. It's a little bit different than when I'm trying to talk to a man and to motivate a man from what we put in the content of who are the authority figures or the people that they're relating to where do I think that they consume media. As I create the whole media strategy for them, I know women are watching TV, but that's not the only thing that they're watching. They're also consuming in other places, heavily in social media, a lot in Facebook, whereas my men, they do spend a little bit more time watching sports, okay? And even with WNBA, they spend a little bit more time watching sports than women in general. And so I take that into consideration as we're crafting that media plan across multiple channels. I'm sure you guys see that when you're doing things in content as well.
Yep, for sure. It's constantly evolving, and you know, there is that fact where you're trying to draw in diverse audiences, different audiences, but at the same time, with all of this women's sports initiative that ION has invested in, it's sports. So we are seeing a similar audience that's gravitating towards that world, that wants to watch more basketball, wants to watch more soccer, and they're leaning into the opportunity to get that in a big way.
It's exciting. So Carey, you've built a lot of women's brands. You've built a lot of content. Talk a little about that.
Yeah, I mean, I've been marketing to women since the beginning. So, you know, it's interesting. I think everything that you just mentioned, Sarah, is so accurate. Like, who is your audience? Where is she consuming content? Where is she making a purchase decision? Where is she actually purchasing, which is sometimes in an altogether different place? How many times does she need to see a message? And then I think there's also the psychology of the female, especially I think in today's day and age, we're being so bombarded by messaging. How do we simplify that process? How do we garner trust so that she can make a purchase decision? How do we overcome decision fatigue? You know, I was at another event last week, and I was at a women's dinner, and it was interesting because we weren't talking about sports, we were talking about the responsibilities that we carry as women and the load that we carry. And so we're not just making purchase decisions for ourselves, we're making purchase decisions for the entire family, for our parents, for our children, for the people around us. So I think really understanding the pain point of your customer and delivering valuable content that helps her arrive at a decision, know what problem she's going to be able to solve, that garners trust so that she's willing to make a purchase decision, and that you can then cut through the clutter with your content and deliver something of value to her. And so to your point, Sarah, your media strategy is everything, but the content that you're producing, the product that you're delivering, the offer, the transparency, all of those attributes become, I think, mission critical as well.
It does, because you have to talk to her about how this is good for not just solving her problem, but her family and all of those responsibilities that she carries. It's not a simple widget that's going to problem solve for me. I have a lot of things to solve for as a woman.
That's right.
Right,
That's
multiple touch points. Right, we always talk about multiple touch points. So Alyson, talk to us a little about how does content impact advertiser performance? You're performance-based, you're a data analyst. Talk a little about analytics and data.
Yeah, so I mean, Sarah and Carey both mentioned trust, and I think that's critically important when we're talking about ad performance. And I think we all know that content does play a role in whether or not our ads are successful. But in podcasting, we see that this correlation is particularly strong. And so what we've done recently is try and dive into the why. Why is content so important to performance? We've done a few different studies, and throughout these studies, we've found 3 key themes, and that is trust, relevance, and attention. This is the why content impacts performance, because it's relevant, it is trustworthy, and it's something people are paying attention to. And so when I think of, for example, when I first heard about an online mental health brand, I heard about it in a podcast where the host was talking about their own experience with mental health. And so I was already leaned into the content. I trusted that the content and the ad was relevant and authentic to the hosts themselves. And so when advertisers are thinking about opportunities to improve performance, one of the ways they can do that is look for content that's relevant, trustworthy, and has a high level of attention already. And oftentimes this premium content costs more money, comes with a premium cost. For performance advertisers, that can be a challenge. But we find that over time, premium content and the cost that comes with it can be just as efficient and effective as some of the non-premium content that you may otherwise run in.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. All right, next. Okay. So from a branding perspective, how has Ion Scripps put themselves on the map with investment in women's sports?
Yes, it's really exciting for us. In 2023, Ion invested in not one, but 2 different franchise leagues with the WNBA and NWSL. So incredibly exciting. 2023 was off to a great start. 2024 hits. We saw a 133% increase in viewership. So if anyone doubted it, the Caitlin Clark effect is real in a big way. And I think for Ion in particular, what we saw was an attraction from the audience to not only seek out watching sports on our network, but we started to bring in a different audience for the fan favorite content that we've always had on air, which is lots of procedural dramas like NYPD Blue and Blue Bloods and Law and Order. So we start to see now a younger audience that's sticking around and leaning into that. We start to see a more multicultural audience that is coming in and watching that programming. So it has been an awesome way to bring in a new audience. The spelling bee is coming up.
It's exciting.
It's all different types of fans are starting to watch because it's becoming more of a general entertainment network. So we're having a completely different audience. It's really awesome to watch.
That's the excitement. I mean, NFL used to always be king. It was men sitting with their beers in front of the TV and watching. And now, look, you have Ion. I have more men friends watching the WNBA than women friends. So it's an amazing time.
Sure. I mean, it's a sports audience that's tuning in.
And it's exciting.
And they want to watch more basketball. They want to watch more soccer. And we are an outlet that's going to give them that opportunity.
That's fantastic.
I think we're seeing more women lean into that. One of the things, if we think about what's happening in the film industry as well as in TV programming industry, as we see women break through the traditional barriers and we see more content being shown of women doing things besides something that's stereotypical, I think you see more women leaning in of like, finally you're telling our stories, because we're more than anything that is just generalized. We have these amazing women in our industries and around us in our world who have done tremendous things, and we want to see and celebrate and be part of that. And so when great stations put that kind of programming out there, we all lean in, and more women will watch sports, more women will watch those channels, because we want to see that, we want to celebrate that. I appreciate that you guys have that on there.
We love it, and I love to hear it from the marketer's perspective because it's obviously important, and getting to talk about it in front of such a large audience of performance marketers and really thinking it through. One thing that, just to piggyback off of that, the NHL, the MLB, NBA, NFL have always been for a very long time blue chip, right? They're everything, and along with that goes the blue chip advertisers. So this has been an opportunity for a really diverse set of marketers to lean into sports in a different way than they have in the past with those programs. And also, when we talk about 133% increase in viewership, things start to change over time, but it's been an opportunity for small and medium-sized businesses to really get to be a part of such an exciting time in sports. So it's really exciting.
It's fantastic. So the sports division for Scripps launched in 2022, as we all know. You always say it's not just new, it's not this year, it really started several years ago, which is exciting. So in 2023, Scripps decided to acquire the rights to 2 dedicated franchises, which you talked a little about, and studio shows related to the WNBA and the NWSL. Soccer has always been prevalent, but basketball is really topping it out now, which is amazing. So you launched a WNBA broadcast in 2023 and then NWSL broadcasts in 2024. How does the new strategy specifically open the funnel for new advertisers?
I would say we've all been on a ride that we've gotten to experience, not just speaking from ION and women's sports, but as an audience. We saw March Madness this past year, and what an incredible ride. And as you said earlier, the female NCAA tournament drawing in more of an audience than men's, so it's really just become basketball. And then on the heels of that, we have the WNBA draft. We have the season, which has been incredible. Then we have the U.S. women's soccer team. So all of these things just build onto such an incredible excitement and fandom, and really lean into the programming, to the sports. And it's just an incredible time. So the investment in the programming has really paid off in a way that's been, it's been wonderful. It's really an exciting way to bring viewers to the content, to give them an opportunity to be a part of such an exciting time. And again, it's as viewers, as consumers, we're all along for this ride. So it's been awesome.
Absolutely. And Sarah, so when you're planning now, you're planning differently because sports has opened up the marketplace, especially women's sports. So what do you tell your clients? How do you convince them that content is queen?
Well, it obviously is going to depend on who I'm trying to reach, right? With so much women's sports programming being attractive, we're taking the position of what do we know about your consumers? And so taking the data that we already have and then augmenting that with what are the behaviorals and traits of people who become customers for us, we're able to show that your customers have these type of traits which align with stations and programming like X, Y, and Z. Therefore, it makes sense for us to do this test. We're not just throwing spaghetti on a wall, even though it's sports and sports works for you. I also have some concrete data that shows that your consumer and your consumer interests align with these stations and are gravitating toward programming like this.
Talking about programming, it's interesting. I don't know if anyone's watched the Women's Golden Bachelor or Bachelorette. It's but it's one of the hottest programming on, linear TV right now. One of the interesting things they did, Carey, is they're putting in and having some of the top, entries, where they're the top women, and they're having them procreate almost like a talk fest, but it's an advertisement on women's beauty and different products. And I know you come from the beauty products, so what are your thoughts on that?
I don't don't watch reality TV. I haven't
it's real.
seen that.
I'm just joking.
But
Spending too much time watching women's sports. Which,
yes. We do watch a lot of sports in my house.
Son, that's why.
I have athletic kids. Well, it's interesting because I was thinking when you were sharing, Scott, and you also, Sarah, when you're talking about women leaning in, I think what's happening is customers have been telling us, audiences have been telling us what they want. And I think finally advertisers are responding. And so that's the benefit of the media landscape that we live in today and the access or the voice, the platform that's given audiences, people, society to say, hey, here's what we want. And then now you have stations and networks and advertisers investing in it. And then the women are showing up and we're going, oh, what a moment. Well, it is a moment, but it's because the demand is there. The demand has always been there. And so I think we're seeing a real powerful dynamic shift, which is we used to, as marketers, say, we're going to tell you what you want. We're going to tell you, we're going to create that need for you. And there is some of that, but going back to the authentic message, this is why I think podcasts are so valuable. And I haven't marketed on podcasts. I'm really excited to talk to you about it. But I've consumed from them and I'm informed by them. And I will make a purchase decision from a podcast and then go maybe do my Google search and wait to be retargeted and kind of wait and see what the advertiser does. So that's why your constellation of touch points becomes mission critical. But going back to the point that I'm making is we used to tell audiences what they want, and now they're telling us what they want. So I think the successful advertiser and the successful marketer is the one who really leans in and listens. And so, yeah, we can have a placement on The Bachelorette, but how limiting. Women don't just watch The Bachelorette or reality TV. Women watch sports, right? Women are consuming content everywhere, and they're powerful purchasers. And so, again, our job is always to be where our audiences are consuming content and to create value through our messaging, through our product, through our offering, through our touch point strategy, through our path to purchase, in a meaningful and impactful way. And I think the awareness that we're creating, to your point, it's less used by performance marketer because they're looking for that moment. But what we do know is audiences have always needed to see something multiple times to make a purchase decision. Exactly. Now she's going to need to see it in multiple venues. Absolutely. And so make sure that you're there consistently with that message, picking up that audience, continuing to add that value. And so I think there's a lot of overlay. And I just want to point out, and I think I mentioned this in our prep call, Alona Mayer, she was on the Olympic rugby team, and they won the gold medal, and now she's on Dancing with the Stars, which I did tune in for her because I started following.
Oh, is that reality TV, or that doesn't?
That is reality
I just want to know.
Stop. Okay. Called out. Okay,
making
busted.
Sure.
Busted. But I tuned in to watch that specifically because I started following her on social media, and she's a powerful, strong woman who is challenging the definitions of beauty, and she's got a lipstick contract, with a color cosmetics company. So she can, out-pull up any man in this room, and she has a gorgeous lip. And so so again, don't tell me what beauty is. Right. We all consume beauty as women, so.
I love it.
You're wearing a gorgeous lip gloss and you're a rock climber.
I love it.
And we're multifaceted people.
I love it.
And as Carey mentioned, more advertisers are paying attention to this content and it's working for them.
Yeah.
Right? And I mean, one of my favorite stories and one of my favorite types of insights to get are those ones that are unexpected. And I do watch reality TV and listen to pop culture podcasts, but one of the most successful campaigns we've had is an auto brand on a pop culture podcast. So it's those unexpected insights that you can find through measurement and by aligning content with brands that allows the advertisers to really learn and gain insights and open a whole new market and a whole new audience that they hadn't previously reached out to.
That's a really good point.
And I love what you said about the moment and how that is changing because, as I said earlier, we see this as not just a moment, but this is a movement, and this is going to continue. The appetite from the consumer and the viewer is there. They're not leaning into it once. It's gotten bigger and it's gotten bigger, and that's not going to go away. This is a sticky opportunity like the other sports opportunities. And as you're talking about this, and when it comes to reality TV, when it comes to podcasting, one thing that we see as the future, and this is something that, I know plan on talking a little bit more about this, but it's the storytelling. It's really becoming the personalities. You see it in every sport. You see it in media in general, that when you start to have that identity that you're building upon, where you know the players, you know who they are, and not just what they do on the court or on the soccer field, but you actually feel like there's a connection, right? When you talk about that, you see someone who's on the rugby field, they're playing a sport, but then all of a sudden they become this dynamic personality. Just like the consumer, they're multifaceted and not just in a vacuum, one type of thing. There's a whole lot more to it, and the storytelling is going to be the future.
That's the excitement.
We see the storytelling also come through commercial advertising.
Absolutely.
So when I think about a commercial that's really successful, there is a storytelling component to it. You want to see that journey come through. And not only do we see it in the numbers that we can measure, because we like to measure in this group, right? But we also see it in programming that they watch. Some of the best watched programming around the Olympics was the stories behind the athletes.
Absolutely.
So we want to understand, we like to watch each other's social media and consume this information. So if we can incorporate that into the content and commercials we produce, and place those commercials in great content, especially if it's relevant, and utilize great data to tell us where are they watching, utilizing people in those commercials that they can relate to, that builds that trust. We have a magic recipe for great success for our clients in selling their products.
And that leads to our next
We're going to
question.
need to continue this conversation
afterwards. So our
last
next
synergy.
Question, sorry. So how can networks monetize programming related to women? Sarah, go ahead, jump in.
How can networks
Yeah,
monetize it?
How do you feel that
Well,
you're
if you've got great programming, I'm going to place commercials on it, and you're going to make lots of money from me.
Absolutely. Tell me a little more how you're monetizing. Scott, you talked a little about how, because people are leaning in, a younger audience leaning into the WNBA, to the Women's Soccer League, and they don't just flip the channel. Okay?
Yes,
they
I
continue
mean,
to watch on. So
for
it helps
us,
with advertising, helps with commercials and monetizing.
Mm-hmm. And what we've seen is, through this season, there have been over 24 new advertisers, and ION has been around for a very long time, that have never bought into the platform. So we're diversifying who we're working with. I mean, marketers that may have never gravitated towards that property. So just like I said earlier about the audience that's watching and changing, the types of brands that are discovering the power of ION overall, because they lean into women's sports, it changes the game, and it changes our network, and it's really changing who the viewer is, what the IP looks like, and there's that general entertainment vibe, and it's not just the people who are watching, it's the advertisers that are monetizing it. It's the brands who are going to pay off, and it's really exciting time for our clients.
I'll add to that too, because what we're seeing in the podcasting space is it's not just about advertising either, it's about building IP around these brands. So we have a show called Morbid. It's a comedy true crime show. If you've listened to it, they have they call it a rabid fan base. They call themselves the Weirdos. They're a top 10 podcast across all audiences, by the way, not just women. And they are building a brand around that show. They've got a board game. They have jewelry and mood rings that they sell. People wear their merch, their stickers on their water bottles. So it's not, advertising, of course, is a key source of monetizing that content, but building a brand and building IP around those brands is also a way for those women and those creators to monetize their content as well.
It's a complete marketing circle. I mean, that's the excitement.
Absolutely.
It's touch, touch, and touch, as we always say. So,
right.
All right, next question. So where do you see women influencing media programming in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, Carey?
Oh, I think we're just getting started. I mean, you said it at the beginning. It's an exciting time to be a woman, and I think, I think it's been bumpy for society, right? I think we tend to kind of overcorrect sometimes when things need to move forward, and but I think, like I was saying earlier, I think women are demanding a seat at the table. They're demanding equitable pay. I sent that meme around to this
was
group.
hysterical. I was going to put it on there.
Yeah, I sent this around where it's like men prefer higher paying jobs like doctor, lawyer, engineer, whereas women prefer lower paying jobs like female doctor, female lawyer, female engineer.
I split a gut when she
so
said it. Split a gut.
Yeah, and so I don't think it's a sour grapes. I think there's a trend toward equity and not to make this a political conversation, but I think what we're seeing is a response. And then I think as women are recognizing that they have a voice, that there's just you said at the beginning, there's just kind of this movement that's happening, a groundswell that's happening. And I think we're just scratching the surface of it. And the podcast is the perfect example of creating content around how audiences are consuming content in this day and age. And then from there, new business opportunities are evolving. And so I think that's what we as performance marketers have always done. Like the media landscape has changed so dramatically because technology has changed. But what we've always been looking for is how to monetize that intersection of our audiences, our customers with the technology. But from there, I think those of us who are able to stay relevant and current and to progress our brands and not become a Kodak experience are the ones who are able to listen and lean in also then to where that content is going, where those opportunities are going, and innovate and create new opportunities to tell our story, to deliver that brand message, to engage with our audiences, to transact with them. So I just think it's just going to keep growing, and it's exciting.
And Alyson, how do you see the growth in podcast with women's content?
Oh, it's growing tremendously. I mean, obviously podcasting, like a lot of mass media, has historically been dominated by men. Right. And in podcasting, we've seen that shift starting to happen. So it's increasing the number of female creators, and that's then driving an increase in female listenership as well. So I mentioned Morbid, of course, a top 10 podcast hosted by two female cousins. But we also have a podcast, it's called Baby, This is Keke Palmer, and Wondery's worked with her to increase her distribution, not just across audio, but video as well. She's grown her audience tremendously. So we're seeing that ability for advertisers then to tap into those audiences, have that authentic relationship with the brand and the host, and that ends up being effective both for the audience and for the brand. So yeah, the growth has been really spectacular to watch and be a part of.
It's exciting. It's all about being authentic.
Well, and I love the point that you just made too, is everyone's consuming content now, right? So we used to have these really beautifully polished and manufactured productions, commercials, whatever. And now anyone can start a podcast.
Yeah.
Anyone can open a store on Instagram. Anyone can get a Shopify store going. And so, with a lot of the creatives that we work on at GEM, we'll use user-generated content, not just in our digital marketing, but now we're seeing it used on commercials effectively.
Which is amazing.
Because it's a testimonial. It's an authentic user story. It goes back to the trust message that you were talking about. But it means as marketers and advertisers have to continually innovate how we're telling our story too, because suddenly you can lose trust if you are overly polished. Because you can't, it's like we're desiring this content and this experience from other people who are similar to us.
Well, it's the old adage, what worked for me will work for you. So it's like, that's why influencers, more and more influencers are being used for commercials and not the normal commercial that we're used to, very avant-garde, out-of-the-box commercials. So it's kind of exciting. All right, let's go to the next one. So, Alyson, how has podcasting become an extension of new content focusing on women?
Yeah, I spoke to this earlier with Keke Palmer and Morbid and their growth. And if you look over the last 5 years, a large majority of podcast listeners were male in the 60% plus range. And now that's shifting. Now it's almost 50-50. A lot of that's because of the increase in female-led content, female content creators. And so yeah, we've seen tremendous growth, and it's, again, the takeaway I think for advertisers here is the ability to reach audiences in an authentic environment, build trust with that audience, and once you have that trust, you can start having a dialogue with that audience, and it's more than just having an ad in your content. It's about opening trust and having an authentic dialogue with the brand and with the audience.
So when we look at all the different media genres, how is podcasting fitting into what you're doing now with, obviously CTV, OTT, linear TV, digital, how is podcasts beginning to play in more and more because of content?
I
think it's terrific as we think about where to reach people who are consuming media, and they need to see things in several different places, that when we start out a project of here's who I'm trying to reach and here's all the places that they're consuming, we start at that beginning of how do we create content that's going to be authentic in the platform that they're consuming and yet still bring forward the same brand USP points all the way through in the content messaging. And so we go into a project looking to bring those threads of consistency throughout, whether it's something more polished that has testimonials that are either done UGC style or actor portrayal testimonials. Then what does that look like for paid social, organic social? When we get into utilizing all those social channels, it's very different what it needs to look like in TikTok versus what it needs to look like in Facebook. And then when my audience is a little, more about the product, that it can be shared with a podcast host who can actually touch, feel what this looks like, they give such a great testimonial in that podcast of what that product is. And when we think about the psychology of persuasion and what really gets people to take action, one of those keys in there is social proof. Okay, and liking fall right together with that. So when you've got that social proof person who you have trust, and podcast is huge for building that trust, that this is someone who had an experience. I don't necessarily think they're trying to sell me. They're sharing with me their experience, and I've got this inherent relationship because I listen to them all the time, that when they endorse something, it's a huge endorsement in my eyes. It's not just a commercial that I've consumed with it. And so to layer that in, to be part of that frequency messaging that people can hear and see it in TV and radio and social, and the website pulls that all together, and now they hear it through in podcasting, it's like the whole world just spoke to them and said, this is what you need, and you need to get it today. It's a fantastic resource.
I love it. I love it. All right, next question. So, which outlets are delivering your biggest successes when it comes to women-directed campaigns? Want to talk a little about that, Alyson?
Yeah. I will use like a podcast-specific example. So, as I mentioned earlier, the campaigns that we see that are most successful follow those three themes. They're relevant, they have a high level of attention, consumers are leaned into that content, and the consumers trust the host that's delivering that message. And so if you're aligning your brand with a relevant, authentic content and creator, then we're seeing the increase in performance. And one example is we had a beauty brand and a pop culture podcast that had already authentically talked about this brand on air without even necessarily having it be sponsored. So we're like, well, hello, we should make this match. And so we reached out to the brand. We had an opportunity to work with that brand, and we created kind of a custom campaign for them. So they had host-read ads, which were that organic, authentic, endorsement that we were talking about earlier. But we also had a custom content integration. So it was kind of a longer form content that just mentioned the brand organically. So it kind of felt like an organic piece of content. And we were able to see that particular campaign drove both upper funnel metrics, so brand awareness, favorability, but also sales. It was a direct-to-consumer beauty brand, and it drove conversions on their website. And when you actually dove into the different segments of what was driving the sales and the highest level of ROAS, you actually saw that those custom content elements and the host-read ads were driving much stronger performance than those other ads that were maybe running across a network or reaching people without that custom messaging. So when we talk about the most successful types of outlets, it's really about finding that audience and the content that is authentic, that consumers are paying attention to, and they have a high level of trust for.
Perfect. So, Sarah, years have been spent, obviously collecting data, analyzing. What are some of your key attributes? What is the most important thing that you're looking at? And does it by, media stream? Do you look at things differently? How do you look at things in totality? But yet, not silo, but complete.
I think she just called me old.
No, they call me a legend all the time. That's old. Go ahead.
So when you start off something, you're going to rely upon the data and information that you have. And at Bluewater, we have a significant database of results. What does that look like for creating content? What does that look like for media placement? And that's so valuable to utilize that, and even all of the components that go into it. What does that response mechanism look like? When do you deliver that response mechanism, and the data points behind that? From a media selection standpoint, not only do we have that data, but especially for a brand who's already done something and tried something, and they have some customer data, to be able to bring that in and then leverage AI data out there to help to expand that data a little bit more and learn a little bit more with that, utilizing that to see what are the things that motivate my customer. My customer may be more motivated by a % off discount or a free gift. And if I can have that information before I get started, how much better my offer can be, how much better I'm speaking her language. And so I think utilizing data to make data-driven results, and then to circle back around and make sure that your data is validated by your test and optimized from there is really where the magic comes together for making it successful for our clients.
Perfect. Can somebody help me back there for the next step? And so, Alyson, what data do you use to optimize goals and make sure the consumer is leaning in? What's the most important thing in podcasts?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at, ad performance, not content performance specifically. I will say that we work very closely with content. So one example is we recently had a brand who's very high energy, very spirited. It's an online travel brand, and they found that their audience over-indexed in a podcast that was kind of lower energy, a little bit more stoic. So we tested the ad. It was live. We used brand lift data and performance-based online conversions. We found that the specific ad in that lower energy podcast was underperforming. And so I took that to our content team, and we said, or more our production team, and I said, hey, can we coach this host to change their tone a little bit? And this will just be one of those learning experiences that I'll always look back on, because they said, absolutely not. We are not going to coach the host to change their tone. That's inauthentic. That's not true to them. It's not what the audience expects from the host. If it's not performing now, it's definitely not going to perform then. So we looked at changing the copy points instead. And we took a little bit more of a personal approach, some personal anecdotes, and we tested that ad again. It performed a lot better. So I think it's using a variety of data points, upper funnel metrics like brand metrics, lower funnel conversion data, and don't let data get in the way of the truth. Don't rely too heavily on the data. Use the data to say this is what needs to be changed, but use your intuition, use your experience and your expertise to decide how to change that. And in this case, it was not changing the host's tone, but changing their copy points and remaining authentic to that message.
I love that. You knew a change needed to be made, so what were the tools that you had available? And that has changed. Host is such a big thing in advertisements, in the commercials that we create, whether it's a male host or a female host. I've seen an evolution on that. It used to be if I was doing a commercial and I needed a doctor to give a testimonial, it needed to be male. It just had to be male.
It's amazing, isn't it? Unbelievable.
Yes.
Unbelievable.
And
It's
I'm
changing now.
seeing it change.
Yes.
And programs that are about, or some of it, I say programs, but I mean a commercial that's more about home renovation, home building, I'm seeing spots with female hosts do very well. And so it's kind of exciting. You think about content, and 10 years ago, I don't think Barbie would have done as well as it recently did. Yeah. And so when we marry these things together and realize that things are changing, when you need to change something, test the variables. It may not be the variable that you first started with, but you know that there's something there. You know it's a great product. You know it's a great show. So change the host, change the copy points.
Fantastic.
Love it.
So Carey, data optimization for you so you hit ROI goals? What's the most important thing?
Yeah, I mean, everyone's brought up so many great points. And by the way, your point about testing is so important and is such an important reminder.
Test, and test.
Test and test some more.
That's how we grow.
One of the things that we see is, and we have conversations with our clients about, should we be looking at last touch, or they're getting really granular about this media spend in this specific category, and yet they want to grow a brand. And ne'er the twain shall meet, right? So we do see a lot of startups who could be really effective because they're really good at pulling one lever. They're really good at optimizing Amazon, or they're really great at, their meta strategy, but they can't achieve scale. And so our clients are interested in, we work with brands that are using performance marketing to build top line revenues, and they have an EBITDA goal because they want to exit typically, or they need to raise additional investment. So there's always a financial objective at play. And so what we're doing is we're trying to look at that constellation of media that's going to create awareness, but in a way that's generating a revenue dollar. And that's not a ground up strategy in our world. And so that's where I think the podcast becomes so interesting. I think they have the power of a television commercial. We look at what's that engine. You always want that engine, but then you want that constellation of other media that's picking it up. So I think there's what you were saying, you're talking about, there's the science of what we do on a data level, and then there's the art of what we do, which is how do you creative problem solve with that information that you're getting. And so that's what we're in the business of doing, and making sure that message is carried through. And so we will look at very specific metrics down to a very granular level on Meta, on TikTok, on everywhere, on Amazon, and but we also have to look at the whole and make really good judgments around that. I'm thinking back in my Murad days when we brought direct to consumer to a retail brand, and we learned the hard way that if we weren't running our TV commercials, retail sales would diminish. Well, we couldn't empirically tie out through our attribution modeling, and we tried exactly what the correlation was, but there was a specific sales would drop. So all ships rise, right? And so I think when we talk about KPIs, I think sometimes we almost get like overly granular, like I'm saying, about a detail, and we forget to look at that whole picture. So you do want to go, hey, what is my objective? Right. What am I trying to accomplish here? And that's going to vary from brand to brand. Is it a sales goal? Is it a pipelining your database with customers goal? It might vary for your business strategy, but I think inevitably you need that engine.
Absolutely.
So look at the whole.
Absolutely. All right, let's go to the last question, then we'll do open to question and answers. Can we go forward one more? Okay, so which outlets are delivering your biggest successes? Sarah, I'm going to ask you that. So how does it all fit in together, and women-directed campaigns, et cetera?
TV. TV is still the biggest channel.
And they say linear is
TV
dead.
is queen.
Linear is still not
That's right.
TV is not dead. We've been hearing that for the last 10 years of my career.
TV's queen. So yeah, for sure. Linear TV is not dead. There's still so much viewership. Are there a lot of other good channels? Yes. TV lifts everything. So as you're talking about measuring all these other components, yes, it's going to lift all of them. To break them all apart is the conundrum, right? And yes, we're going to look at all of those components to optimize each channel and then to optimize the mix of those things. But to reach women, I start with TV.
It's the halo of everything else.
It
is absolutely. Halo. People don't want to hear that, but
I love what you're saying because it's bigger than just TV, but it all goes hand in hand. So when we talk about ION through the linear and CTV pipes, right? We're seeing year over year 133% growth of the viewership. Where's the next step? And that's the storytelling. That's our studio shows, which continue to build, as I said earlier, the storytelling. So all of these things go hand in hand. And I love hearing about organic nature, the storytelling, the authenticity, because what happens then, There's, of course, the word of mouth as we start to talk about games and the water cooler talk, the podcasting, the social, the UGC, all of these things come together. Our part is to come in and have those games in front of you. Then how do we build around that? And that's going to be by that storytelling and making you really feel like you know who you're watching and not just seeing them on the court. And all of these things come full circle and help to build that environment.
Absolutely. Thank you. We're going to go to Q&A, Tom.
Questions? Anyone? We got 10 minutes.
It's the first time I've done a panel with no questions. It's shocking.
You've gotten all the answers.
4 brain
all
trusts.
The answers.
4 brilliant brain trusts.
Great panel. And on podcasting, I was very, political guys, sorry. But I loved the fact that Kamala went on Call Me Daddy. Yeah. And that seemed like a very, smart, strategic way to appeal to, women's issues. And I'm wondering if you could speak to maybe what you've been hearing about that. Because I thought that was just a brilliant strategy to sort of cut through the clutter.
Yeah, I mean, Call Her Daddy is not a Wondery show, but obviously we all heard about that. And I think to your point, I mean, what a great strategy to be able not just to reach folks visually through television and that medium, but through audio as well. And I think what makes that type of connection so powerful is that you now have that relationship with Kamala through your headphones, right? And that's like directly into your brain. And we've actually found, biometric research that demonstrates that drives results for advertisers, and it creates a powerful emotional connection with the content. And so to your point, I think absolutely a strategic, really good move on her part. But we're also seeing more female content in politics, right? I mean, we have, more Rachel Maddow, she's got a podcast. Right, and so, and we see more female led, or not even if the creator is female, but the content itself is focused on females. We see that in our political podcasts as well. So absolutely a surge in both creators and content in the political space for women as well.
Any other questions?
One more over here.
Thank you, Caitlin.
So this has been really interesting. I remember talking about content. Samantha Bee had this segment, God, this had to have been like 7 or 8 years ago, where she would talk about how dumb men were in female commercials. Where it was like, I don't know where a pan is. And the woman, Carey, I think to your point about how much weight women bear, and they're like, oh, my stupid husband doesn't know how to boil water, and how can I trust him to go? How can I trust
that personally?
Right? Like, how can he pick out the right brand of tampons when he doesn't know how to boil water? And it's interesting as you're talking about sort of like the evolution of sort of like the female in a lot of this content. It seems like the just like stereotypical woman is getting more nuanced in content as it relates to not even just the marketing messages, but the portrayal of them and the portrayal of sort of like the environments that they're in, and how it is becoming a little bit more, again, nuanced, I think, and real. And then, the sports and all of this. And I'll never forget trying to find a female Kings jersey at a Kings game, right? Mm-hmm. And it was like you had every other thing, and I was so mad because I knew they made them. And it's like all of a sudden women are just becoming these multidimensional characters, which I think you guys have talked about. But I guess I've lost my question in this as I've started talking through it. But as you've seen this, how is that kind of non-stereotypical representation kind of impacting what you guys are starting to see in the day-to-day, both from content, which we've talked about, right? And then in the creative, in measurement and all those things. Like, is this something that you guys are kind of seeing as well beyond just sort of like, what we've talked about today? Here's my husband who does know how to boil water. I do feel like I need to give him that credit.
A quick analogy on that. Have you ever been in one of those ice cream stores that has like a bazillion flavors everywhere? it's really hard to find vanilla in that store. Okay, if you think of women as vanilla, you are now shopping in an ice cream store with a bazillion flavors, and you will have a hard time cost effectively reaching that woman. If you think about her today as being complex and consuming media all over these places, and that she has complex needs, and you can address that with your content, your creative, your talent, she will recognize herself in what she's seeing. But if you portray her as vanilla, your response won't be there because she's no longer accepting the title of vanilla.
Yeah.
And I'd love to share my thoughts on the other part of your question, which is the Kings game and seeing that jersey. I don't think I'm alone when I say I'm seeing a lot of men. I'm seeing basketball fans walking around in Caitlin Clark jerseys now. So
It's amazing.
Imagine I'm not the only one, and that's really cool because it's showing, yes, this is women's sports. Yes, this is focused on that. But these are basketball fans, right? So you're really starting to see that fandom and lean in from the people who love to watch basketball, and it's not just women; it's sports fans.
And I'll add to that too, because you look at a podcast like New Heights from the Kelsey brothers, right? The Taylor Swift effect. That, obviously sports podcasts are mostly male audiences, but for that particular show, it's almost 70% female.
It's amazing.
And so even though, right? And it's so even though they're two male hosts, they're speaking the language of the female audience in ways that other sports podcasts aren't.
It's fantastic. Any other questions before we wrap it up? Back there.
I sat through a lot of focus groups on shows, commercials that were done in the past. And whenever I sat in on focus groups, which were women evaluating a female spot, I was astounded with how critical the women in the focus group were about the female character in a particular infomercial or TV spot. And that I've always kind of questioned why I know kind of like, how do you break through that very crusty, critical evaluation? She might be the call it a female host or whoever it is in the spot is saying something, and they're criticizing her blouse or her hair, or I don't believe her because I really don't like how she looks, as opposed to the quality of what the host or the show is saying. So I think when I would sit in on focus groups with men, they weren't so critical of the persona. They were more focused on, I would say, the content. And I just wondered, since we're talking about the content being queen, if you have any comments on that.
I do. I think, and you can probably speak to this as well, when you talk about spokesperson who's going to be helping out to really, sell through a brand and an advertisement, we can start to take out and find a way, and we keep hearing the word break through the clutter. You're seeing powerful athletes, which is breaking down that idea. So when you see a Caitlin Clark and Nike, it's a powerful athlete who is in front of the audience, and all those surface things that may have been identified with the past and how women are perceived in a commercial start to break down, because it is the storytelling, it is identifying who that athlete is, learning more about them, and seeing them on the court and really getting to know who that person is. And you're certainly not going to take one of them and put them in the type of commercial you would have seen 10 years ago. It's going to be aligned with what you see when you see, an athlete in a traditional male commercial, right? When you see any of the variety of, we'll go back to Nike athletes that are out there. When you see Patrick Mahomes and State Farm, right? It's because he's an athlete, and I think it's going to be no different for females. I'd love to hear your perspective on that, but that's my perception.
3 thoughts. 1, that was very well said. Thank you. Okay. Number two, I think that when we're in a focus group panel like that, we're being asked to be critical. And I think that there's probably a podcast out there about why women, we are so critical about ourselves and the roots and the foundation of that. And I think it's very deep and deeper than what we'll be able to cover here. But ultimately, when we're putting a commercial together and working on that content, we're looking for powerful people to be able to deliver that. So we're not focused, and our audiences aren't focused on what is that blouse, is her shade of lipstick just right, but is she believable? Yeah. Can I relate to her? Did this product really solve that problem, that pain that I'm seeing her going through, or the passion she has, this testimonial of, wow, this really changed my life? Is her message, is this delivery believable? And I really hope that the commercial is well done enough that I'm focused on the product and the service and not what my talent is wearing on there. And I hope that as a society, to the second point, that we can listen to the right podcasts and listen to the right sources and get past being so critical of ourselves and other women and build each other up.
Brilliant performance. 4 brilliant panelists. We're so lucky. Thank you all for coming. So appreciate it. Thank you. Have a great rest of your day.